Let me ask you a question. Could you name what your favorite song of all time is? Actually, you know what? I'll do you one even better. Do you know what your top 10 favorite songs of all time are? Because I know I would struggle to even name you my top 5, which is crazy to me because your favorite song should be as ubiquitous as your favorite food or your favorite color. But the more people I ask, the more I realize it just is not that simple. And I mean, yes, it does make some sense. The music we care about is connected to a variety of different emotions and memories, so it's not just as easy as the color you like the most. But I guess just because this question is so fascinating to me, a few years ago I decided to try to figure it out. Why do people love the music they love so much? And how do I find more music that I love? And it was a horrible idea. Okay, maybe I was exaggerating a little bit. It wasn't horrible, but it was definitely bizarre. And if you have not caught on yet, the journey that I'm talking about, the one to find out why people love the music they love and to find more music that I love, led me straight to Rate Your Music. And what's funny about me saying that name is that I can literally hear the collective groan coming from half of the people watching this video right now. And I can also feel the confusion coming from the other half of people watching. But it's okay, I got you both. If you don't know what Rate Your Music is, it's essentially a website where albums are rated by average user score, 1 through 5. This is what it looks like, this is its logo, and these are the top 100 albums on the site. You got all that? I've always had a moderate interest in statistics, and I also really like lists. Well, me and the entire fucking internet. So I started my journey by just looking up what the top albums of all time are with the intention of listening to them in order. And here is where I think a lot of longtime music listeners will agree with me when I say that this is my number one biggest mistake. The absolute biggest lesson I learned from all of this was that not every album is necessarily going to be an easy listen for you where you're currently at, and that's okay. Everyone has their own preferences, and in order to step out of those preferences, you kind of have to build up a tolerance. But let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. A lot of people find it hard to listen to metal music. So if someone who does find it hard to listen to metal music wanted to form an opinion about some metal albums, they'd have to start somewhere a little bit easier, somewhere more pop-oriented, maybe a fusion of multiple genres, just a little bit easier on the ears. What they would not want to do is listen to the top 1, 2, or 3 metal albums, because those are going to lean very hard into the things that metal listeners love, maybe the things that don't make metal so easy to listen to in the first place. Of course, I have no idea. The top 1 metal album could actually be a super easy listen, but I am far too lazy to go look up what it actually is, so just go with me for the sake of example. And you get the idea. To try to listen to the top albums as rated by very experienced music listeners and music critics was a horrible idea. It was never going to go well. Just imagine my confusion when I looked at the top albums list and recognized maybe a third of the album covers there. And then imagine my further fear when I went to listen to some of those albums I didn't recognize and heard what post-rock sounded like for the first time. Yeah, for those unaware, because I know I wasn't, it's not necessarily a genre that you want to just jump into. You kind of have to have some expectations. But at the same time, that was kind of the most intriguing part of it all at first. These critically acclaimed albums kind of have a certain sound to them. It's really hard to put your finger on. A newer music listener would probably just say that the albums sound weird. I would say that it's what really innovative albums sound like, and a really experienced music listener would probably say that's what actually passable production sounds like. But it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it's the point I'm trying to drive home in this first section. Critically acclaimed music is scary and intimidating, and it's really hard for newbies to get past that kind of unique sound that a lot of these albums have, i.e. Remain in Light, The Velvet Underground and Nico, Vespertine, Spiderland, Long Season, all albums that are difficult to listen to if you've never dipped your toes into experimental, avant-garde, or long-form albums at all. And I hope all you experienced music listeners know what I'm talking about, or at least recognize that it is very, very real. To some degree, it's slightly alienating at first, because you feel like a crazy person not instantly loving the albums on first listen that everyone says are fantastic. So far, we've established that Rate Your Music is a scary website for new music listeners, and the albums featured on the site can be difficult to listen to at times. We've also established that my experience on the website initially was very intimidating. But now I want to talk about 3 specific things that I have just been itching to get off of my chest for the past few months. First of which being the albums themselves that are held so near and dear to everyone on Rate Your Music's hearts. Okay, so I went into Rate Your Music with this absolutely mentally ill mindset of thinking that if I didn't like a top album of a genre or of a year, that I was wrong, and I need to figure out how to like it. And the typical initial response to this is, damn, that sucks. Sounds like a you problem. But think about it, can you really blame me for thinking that way? These albums are rated so highly, I thought, for a reason. Fuck preferences, I should love every album that everyone else does. That's why they're rated so highly. And this is going to be a common pattern for the rest of this video, but yes, this is where that first lesson I learned comes back in. Just because these albums are rated highly on average, it still doesn't mean you don't have your own likes and dislikes that would prevent you from liking something as much or not as much. For example, and this is where we get to piss so many people off. I don't really like this album, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. What the fuck, man? This album goated. Goat album, boo, you stink. But here's the thing. I could list you the multitude of reasons as to why this album has always kind of annoyed me even after a few good listens, but it shouldn't matter because at the end of the day, you're right and I'm wrong. Yes, the majority does enjoy this album, so I am technically incorrect for not also enjoying it, but at the same time, isn't that what music's all about? We all know that music isn't objective. No album can be objectively good or objectively bad. So in reality, it's just about finding the stuff you like. I would go as far to say that for the average person, ratings don't really matter at all. You should probably just scroll far enough until you find stuff that you're interested in listening to, and if you like it, great. If you don't, you don't. Crazy part is though, scrolling until you find something that interests you isn't always that easy, is it? Because of the nature of the rating system, albums that are deemed average or uninteresting are pushed down. Albums that others may really enjoy. So if your album isn't really good or really bad, it might be the hardest to find. I'll give you this though, it does make a little bit of sense. If you care enough to find music you really, really love, you should care enough to put some work in. But still, it is brutal. And let me be clear, it's not that I want the rating systems on Rate Your Music and other websites completely gone. I think they're useful for putting the right albums in front of people. I'm just trying to point out some of its flaws that people seem all too keen to ignore. Let this section be a beacon of hope to all the people out there who are like me. Yes, your next favorite album is probably out there. You might just have to keep looking. For a while. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is reviews on Rate Your Music. Imagine for a second, you're kind of curious. You want to see the ratings and reviews for your favorite albums, but there's barely any there. They've got plenty of streams on Spotify, but people on Rate Your Music seem to think they're uninteresting and shallow, and the reviews say as much too. Well, if you're anything like me, in that situation, you immediately assume all the reviews are right, and this means that your music taste is indeed shallow. In my specific situation, the reviews about my favorite albums spanned from mid and uninteresting to just outright bad. A bit of a kick in the balls. And well, because of this newfound insecurity, I decided to throw out my entire music taste. All my old favorites would be condemned to the Guilty Pleasures playlist right next to Ariana Grande and Skrillex. And again, this seems like a total skill issue, just a complete me problem. But I ask you again, can you really blame me? I was being vulnerable, showing Rate Your Music my favorite albums, and it spit in my face and told me they were corny and stupid, and I was corny and stupid for liking them. So I was basically sitting there willing to do whatever it took to not be corny and stupid anymore. Just imagine me and my vulnerable self seeing a review like this. Oh wait, do people think Loveless is overrated? Is that the right opinion? Okay, fine, alright, don't like My Bloody Valentine. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yes, it's exaggerated, but that is how it went most of the time. And the opposite is also true. I saw people raving about Godspeed You Black Emperor, and what do you know, now F Sharp, A Sharp, Infinity is my favorite post-rock album. But Liam, what's your point, man? We get it. You're a pussy. You let the reviews influence your music taste. See, I would never let that happen. You're just a beta. Listen, in the same way that I talked about collective opinion being basically meaningless, individuals' opinions are also not a good metric for finding out how enjoyable an album is going to be. 9 times out of 10, if you look hard enough, you can find a review that you disagree with, and sometimes it only takes one to change your opinion on an album for the worse, and that sucks. Even worse, if you haven't listened to an album yet, but you were kind of interested and you read one review, sometimes it only takes one to make you not want to listen to it anymore. And that sucks even more. You all know I love Tame Impala on this channel, so we'll use Kevin as an example. Let's say you're a new Tame Impala listener and you're kind of curious about his early stuff. And let's also say you made the horrible mistake of browsing the Rate Your Music page for Lonerism before listening to it. And then let's also say you saw this review as it is on the first page. Are you still as excited to listen to the album? And yes, I am aware the average rating for Lonerism on Rate Your Music is pretty high, and most reviews are positive, but you're telling me if you saw that review and these, it wouldn't taint your experience listening to the album at all? I know for me and my on-the-fence weebly wobbly ass, it probably would. Maybe that example sucks, and it just sounds like I'm complaining about there being negative reviews for an album I like, but I think my point still stands. Takeaway for this section, please, for the love of God, listen to an album before reading the reviews. So the last point I want to make is a little bit sadder, and there's a lot less to take away from it, so just, you've been warned. There is pessimism approaching. When getting into music, there was a certain phenomenon that I was warned about, and that was that over time, as you listen to more and more albums that are varied, extravagant, and very artsy and in-depth, you might start to lose your ability to feel as strong emotions from some music as easily. Now, I don't want to speak for everyone, as I think most people, including me, can still feel strong emotions from some music, but it was definitely noticeable to some degree within months of listening down the Rate Your Music charts. But in case you're confused, I think there might be a better way to explain this. There was a point in time where Out of My League by Fitz and the Tantrums made me lose my fucking mind, and I held the song pretty close to my heart. Now, I can recognize that the song is gas, because it is gas, but it's not held to nearly the same personal or emotional level that I once held it to. Yes, that is a very extreme example, but I guess my point is that over time, I've just gotten pickier with my music. Like I said, I can still listen to a banger and know it's a banger, but after listening to so many albums and really honing in on what I like and dislike, it's not gonna hit as hard as easily. The funny part is though, there's a small chance that this just isn't a thing, and all the people I've heard talk about this and me are just dumb. But really, who knows? I mean, the comments of this video are already going to be an absolute war zone, so why not add to the fire? And the other thing I want to mention here is growing pessimism about music. I am constantly seeing people reference in reviews and arguments online that genres are being dumbed down and turned into a homogenous mess. Oh, thanks guys. All right, so I'm supposed to hate music now. That's great. Okay, I'll just get into painting. No, but seriously, we already live in a very cynical time. What's the point in just complaining about the music not being as good as it used to be? Like, if y'all hate the state of music right now that much, just pick up a fucking guitar and start writing, bozo. Okay, but now I'm seriously just complaining, so let's move on. There were so many things I wanted to talk about when it comes to weird things on Rate Your Music that I never even mentioned. There was honestly just so much I wanted to talk about that it was hard to fit it all into one concise video. For example, Rate Your Music's bias towards Western audiences and how individual reviewers like Fantano influence album scores. But at the end of the day, my intentions for this video were to lay out my experience with Rate Your Music and hopefully relate with some of you guys about some of the very interesting things you find when browsing on the site. Well, that and also to bully Rate Your Music users because it is way too fun. Okay, one more time. Watch this. Ready? Bad album.